Hi there, welcome to Elementally Human. You've got Hamish here and Steph from Elementally Human, and it's our great pleasure to welcome our special guest for this week, which is Simon Harwood. He's the Global Effectiveness Director at Billion Dollar Boy. Hi, Simon.
Hi Hamish. Hi Steph. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Oh, look, it's a real pleasure. It's a real pleasure. Now, you're a stalwart of the industry, Simon, a measurement guru, a measurement heavyweight. I know that you were the CEO of the Seven Stars, and for a long time you were
Oh,
the head of
that's something there. What's the
creativity.
CEO?
Oh, sorry, did I say CEO? I meant CSO.
Just promoted me.
Uh, Absolutely. Listen, it was a promotion that was clearly overlooked, but you were the
Wired to leave.
CSO
CFO.
at the Seven Stars, and also you were the head of creativity and innovation at PhD Media for I think over 12 years.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 12 years at PhD, fantastic agency. Moved to the Seven Stars about 7 years ago, and then entered the wonderful world of creator marketing about 2.5 years ago with Billion Dollar Boy.
Goodness me, in head first into the world of creative marketing influencers. What's it been like to go
Yeah.
from traditional media into the world of influencers?
It's been great. It's been a steep learning curve. I'm not going to lie. It's different. It is very different. But the good thing is, I think having that outside perspective, I've been able to bring to bear some of the things that I've seen work well, whether it's looking at strategies or measurement in the world of kind of media and general communications outside of creator. It's
Mhm.
maturing really fast. There's lots of new learnings all the time, new lessons that we can apply. So yeah, no, it's been a blast. So and that actually, yeah, my background is media strategy and media planning, but a special interest in creativity and what makes for impactful communications.
Brilliant. Finding the story in the data. And Steph Money, dialing in from the US. How's the week going for you?
Good. I'm happy to be back because I missed last month. So now you've got your co-host back, which is
It was
fantastic.
your birthday. We were never going to get in the way of a good celebration.
It was my birthday. Yeah, no, don't ask me to do anything on my birthday. But but no, doing really well. It is cold here. I left England for a reason, and now I'm freezing my butt off. So not stoked about that. I even have my blanket wrapped around me down here. So yeah, not down with the cold, but
But it's not raining though.
pushing through.
I've got my old lady blanket as well, which was knitted by my cousin, and that sits on my knee every now and then. Do you have an old man blanket, Simon?
I don't, but my little boy's got plenty of teddy bears. I'm in a room surrounded by teddy bears at the moment, so I could grab one of those if I need to get comfortable.
If you ever need a snuggle, they're always there. Well, that's brilliant. So, Simon, really happy to have you on today. We have really enjoyed working with Billion Dollar Boy this year, measuring lots of different campaigns and really kind of digging into what makes creator content great. And one of the real standout campaigns this year for us, and I'm sure for Billion Dollar Boy, was Argos. They have worked with you on a very cool campaign called Argos. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
I think that
And
is.
Yeah, it was a. What was really fascinating about it is the kind of satirical take on the art industry that they've done, and they've done this really interesting kind of strategy that is not only sort of redefining storytelling, but also doing it in a different format, which is episodic. So we'd love to talk about that, but I'd love to talk about it against the backdrop of memory. Memory is something we're looking at thematically at the moment at Element Human and really trying to explore the importance of content that sticks in the memory. So, Simon, is this something that is important to Billion Dollar Boy?
Absolutely, yes. So one of the things that we have always held as a bit of a kind of principle at Billion Dollar Boy is that it's really not about the social metrics that can flatter to deceive a little bit. It's not just about engagement. Obviously, it's very nice to see content that's kind of flying very well on those fronts. But if it's not broken through to memory, and especially made an association with the brand in question, then it is essentially a bit of a kind of waste of time and effort. So yes, we're definitely in the business of memory. In our view at Billion Dollar Boy, powerful communication is about driving long-term associations and the right memory structures and associations with the brand. So if you don't cut through to memory, then there's a good chance that not only will your ads not be remembered, but more importantly, the effect won't take hold in terms of lodging that brand in people's memory for the long term. And the next time that they're ready to enter the market or they're browsing the supermarket shelf, we need to ensure that your brand is the one that's coming to mind with the right associations. So yes, very much about memory, and we've been really interested working with Element Human to decode some of the features that we think make for memorable content.
Yeah, brilliant. And what I find interesting about memory is that there's not a lot of measurement of memory around, but the actual understanding and appreciation of it, I think, has been around for quite a while, because I'm sure we're all aware of Byron Sharp talked about mental availability. That's, I think, 15 years old now, that he brought that out in his book, How Brands Grow. And, just for full context, he talked about a key to sales of products is to be able to deliver on two specific things. One is physical availability, which is the ability of a product to be distributed enough to be available when you are ready to buy. So it has to be physically available. But the other part, which I thought really caught everyone's interest, was mental availability, which is the ability of the brand to communicate to its consumers in such a way that when what we call category entry points arise, which is a scenario in which it's time to buy in that category, that brand is thought of. And that is really the essence of memory, right? That we create memory associations that'll allow for that brand to be thought of in those category moments. What's your thought and Billion Dollar Boy's thought on how creators and influencers can create memory in creator marketing?
Yeah, so we observed with great interest the recent IPA research that showed that creators indeed do drive lasting sales effects, actually, compared to the majority of channels. In fact, all other channels, the vast majority of return on investment from creator activity happens in the long term. So the IPA defined the long-term sales effect as greater than 3 months, but it can be anything up to 2 years. That's a hell of a long window to have to remember the effect of, and for advertising to have that long-term effect. So we know that creators drive lasting sales effects, but to be effective in this very long window, we actually need their content to be memorable. And for us, there's a couple of things that you need to drive long-term memory. There is first of all, the ability to stand out and gain attention in the first place, especially in the busy social feed. So that's important, but that's just the first hurdle. The second hurdle is then to actually lodge that piece of content in your long-term memory. That's where you need something else. So emotion can be really important. So we know that really entertaining content is much more likely to stick with people if you make someone laugh, cry, surprise, shock them. Much more likely to remember it. And then the third element is strong branding. So strong, early but natural branding is what you need to make sure that you haven't just caught someone's attention and entertained them, but they're making the associations with the right brand, and hopefully some desired associations that stick with them, so that the next time, as you say, with mental availability, that they enter the category, your brand is one of the first that comes to mind, and it makes it a default kind of easy decision to choose.
Yeah, and Simon, just a quick one. In terms of explaining this, obviously a lot of brands and your clients are probably used to seeing those vanity metrics, engagement, views. How are you getting them to shift that mindset into this attention, emotion, memory point of view?
Yeah, great question. So what we have done is essentially always steer things back when it comes to kind of the metrics that we're going to measure, the metrics that matter, back to the client's objectives. So if the client says, I want to drive awareness, then we say that's great. We will measure the social metrics that might be linked to awareness. So things like reach, impressions, that we know tend to be prerequisites for awareness, but they're not awareness metrics themselves. But then we'll say to them, right, we need to look at the impact on your awareness. Say it was a new product launch, or in the case of Arghaüs, it was actually around perception shift. So changing the people's perception of Argos. It's not got an awareness problem. So again, this is where a brand lift study is so effective, because we can say, right, let's look at the actual effect on people who are exposed to the campaign in terms of the perception change, that kind of mid funnel. So yeah, it's a different conversation. A lot of clients are used to seeing social metrics, and they can be really useful to benchmark versus your previous performance or against your competitor set. But to really understand the communications impact, you need to look at those kind of intermediate metrics in the mid funnel, and then see if successfully changing those metrics has a shift in terms of purchase intent and sales further down the line.
Yeah, 100%.
Simon, earlier you were talking about the importance of emotion, stimulating emotion, and that great entertainment content and content that drives emotion works well for memory. And this reminds me of what neuroscience says about how memory associations are created, which is that memory doesn't exist as a single thing. It is about, as you say, memory structures. And from an evolutionary perspective, there is this trait that happens in humans, which is when we have a moment of great emotional intensity, our brains switch on and start writing what they see onto the big long-term hard disk. And I used to, when I used to talk about this, say to people, hands up, who remembers where they were when 9/11 happened? And everybody's hands would go up, because we all who were old enough remember where we were, because that was a moment from an evolutionary perspective where we think that our survival is under threat. And when our bodies think that, or our brains come to that conclusion, they all our senses become very attuned. So our sight really switches on, our ears listen very keenly, and our brain starts to capture what it sees. And this is a survival instinct. And it's interesting that really, if we boil down advertising, it is an exercise in trying to trigger that neural pathway by creating emotional impact and getting people to remember and to create the right associations. So we need to think about the types of emotions that we want to associate with the brand, because it's going to get wrapped like a little gift. So when you re-experience, or when you're in that moment of re-remembering, you're going to remember that emotion and remember the associations that were created in that structure as well.
Yeah, we definitely remember things. I think things that are vivid, things that tickle us. So there's the humor effects, like amusement or laughter, creates a much more enjoyable experience, and people tend to remember the things that happen at the end of an experience, but also the peak of the experience. So that can also lead to improved memory retention. And then also, I think people remember things that are a little bit odd, a bit out of the usual. So there's something called the bizarreness effect, which means that slightly out of the ordinary material is much more likely to be remembered than more common content tropes. And there's been lots of studies looking at social media that shows how quickly people content starts to look and sound the same. Even from trends pop up and then suddenly everything's looking the same. So leaning on that as well it is great, because people are always on the lookout. That comes from evolutionary psychology as well. We're always scanning the horizon for something that might be a threat or coming to eat us. So there's a number of biases that we can play with.
There is this whole thing about mental heuristics, which is that when we see things routinely, our brain determines that these things are not a threat, and so it stops paying attention to them. So if you drive past the same billboard every day on the way to work, at some point your brain's going to start screening that out, and you're not going to remember what was up there unless something highly unusual pops up there. So just as you say, it needs to disrupt the heuristics to stop your brain automatically screening them out.
Yeah, I think there's actually something really powerful about mixing something that's very familiar with something that's unexpected. I think that can be dynamite because it's got from memory at least, because it's playing to that idea of something that's a little bit out of kilter with something that is actually very familiar. And this is where I think creators have got such strengths, because they are a familiar kind of trusted voice for the people who follow them, but they also are, great masters of spectacle, of entertainment. They're a lot of them are quite funny. They're great at using humor, and they're also expert storytellers and creating content that is, arrests your attention, and then also ignites some kind of emotion that makes it more likely to be remembered in the long term.
I also think what's really interesting is I know there's a lot of talk about the different algorithms, and everybody's always trying to find out like what is the algorithm, what are we trying to master here. But what I find really interesting is what the move from following to the For You page, for instance, on TikTok. And so it's exactly what you guys are saying. When you start to watch more of certain videos, it all starts to be a bit samey. You start to get those similar creators, and then all of a sudden the algorithm will drop something super random in, and you're like, oh, this is different, and it completely shifts what your algorithm's going to be depending on how long you watch it. And so I do find that really interesting, that it sounds like that even TikTok's using some of these kind of like neural insights in order to continue to re-engage consumers on the platform, especially as we're seeing more and more people utilize the platform more often per day than we used to, especially around all that silent scrolling. So it's this kind of dichotomy of seeing all these familiar bits, but then having one stand out. And I think with that, what I'd love to understand, Simon, is how do your teams at BDB really look at when they're gonna how to have something stand out? Because we talked about memory, but it starts with that attention aspect. How do you guys think about that? It's like, how are we gonna stand out in the sea of sameness, essentially?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we spend a lot of time actually working out what are the tropes of the category, what are the expected norms, whether it's get ready with me in beauty or whatever it might be, because to break the rules you have to kind of know what they are in the first place. And yeah, there's something really, I think, as I say, interesting when you introduce or you sort of remix something that is quite familiar, and you bring in something that's completely unexpected. So we've been working with actually one of our clients, Hellman's, had this fantastic idea to because we noticed that one of the really popular food creators on TikTok is a big lover of Hellman's, and his wife actually we got his wife to dress up as a giant tin of Hellman's to surprise him with a special meal.
That's awesome.
So it was kind of like, this was definitely unexpected content, and very funny as well. I think that just having that instinct, I think it's like an instinct, just in the same way as creators have an instinct for what they think their audiences are going to love. We try to kind of look at what is expected, and then how we can drop in something that's quite unexpected into the mix, and with a result of cutting through the sea of sameness, but also making someone have a emotional response that means that they're going to remember us in the future.
Love that. I think dressing up as a big jar of mayonnaise definitely fits the bill there. So Simon, I'd love to hear about your ideas about best practice. Steph and I have noticed there's quite a lot of new kind of waves of AI helping us out to understand what's going to work. And Steph, what is it that you've been seeing with some of these kind of AI best practice tools?
Yeah, I think, we've been seeing a lot of brands kind of take these on as a way to kind of in a very easy manner decide like if this is going to work for us or if it's not, based on, these very formulaic parameters. I kind of liken it to Willy Wonka, the scene with the golden egg, whether it's a good egg or a bad egg. It's that idea that creator is so nuanced and creativity is really hard to put into very strict measurement parameters. How are you kind of dealing with that at BDB in terms of kind of best practices versus formulaic approaches? And it'd be interesting, especially to hear about how the different teams are seeing it. So a strategist and a creative person are probably seeing it very differently versus someone in measurement.
Yeah, it's a very live topic at the moment because the tools that are available to essentially kind of review creative content before it goes live, or even as it's just gone live and in flight, are becoming really sophisticated, and a lot of them are powered by very smart kind of models that can actually kind of predict the likelihood that it's going to be seen, remembered, and thought of in the future. I think that the way that we kind of look at it is to really almost see it not in terms of a guidebook for crafting the content, but more of a minimum standard. So a certain threshold. It's good to have it as a fail-safe to make sure that we're not creating content that's just going to get absolutely unnoticed. The IPA research also actually showed that although creator ROI is incredibly strong, especially for the long term, it's also incredibly choppy. So you've got some incredible campaigns with disproportionate return on investment, and you have also got the other end of the spectrum campaigns that absolutely sink without trace, and you don't really get that in other media like say TV, where even if you've got an absolutely woeful ad, such is the kind of the frequency that you've got a chance of maybe getting through, but in creator space average just like sinks without trace. So it's really important to kind of to know what the best practice rules are but not be governed by them, because that is the quickest way to essentially shortcut to average, and as I just said, average just doesn't get noticed. So you could be following all the kind of guidelines and looking at, I don't know, branding in the first couple of seconds, and that, we know that early branding is really important, but you can't use it as a formula. So yeah, as I say, I think it's useful to cut out the stuff that's really gonna sink and not have any chance. But I would be a little bit careful about using it as essentially a playbook for how to use how to create advertising networks, because it's not going to tell you how to come up with a really entertaining concept or a really powerful emotive hook that's going to keep people grabbed. It's not going to kind of lean into some of the intuition that creators are so great at doing, and understanding what's going to really kind of work for their audience, what's going to make them tune in next time, pay attention. So it's marketing is, I believe, it's art and science, and creative advertising is within that wider world of marketing. So it's great having the science to kind of decode and why a piece of work worked, and also to set some minimum standards. But you can't build a piece of entertaining, memorable content through science alone.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Hamish and I have talked about this before. We were kind of going through some of our favorite commercials, and we were like, that wouldn't pass, or that wouldn't pass. You talked a lot about the Cadbury commercial, Hamish.
Yeah, the Cadbury's Gorilla commercial would absolutely have failed, or the AI sort of best practice checks, I think. It doesn't mention the brand in the first 5 seconds. It doesn't show a human face quickly or establish, the kind of usual things that we would want to tick off. It shows a gorilla on a drum kit, and it's a really slow build, and you don't really see the brand till the end card at the end, and yet absolutely, people still talk about it to this day after all these decades. A campaign that absolutely did not follow the rule book, I think, was Argos. And I'd love to now get into this great campaign that ran this year, still running, as far as I can tell. Simon, tell us the Arghaüs concept and idea, this episodic format that was devised. We're going to take a look at some of the results, but I'd love to hear, what was the brief that landed on the desk of Billion Dollar Boy?
Yeah, so we spoke earlier about making sure that we're measuring the objectives of the campaign. This Argos had a very clear objective. It was all about perception change. So this is really kind of focused on the mid funnel. And obviously, Argos have been around a while. Awareness is not their issue. But what they do want to do is to use creators to essentially drive perception and shift consideration and shift perception of what they call the A-list range. So these are the really kind of premium, desirable kind of tech products that you might not think of Argos as the first place. We were talking about memory earlier. So when you kind of talk about the latest tech or the latest, say Apple Watch or air fryer, whatever it might be, you might not think of Argos straight away. So this was about perception change and how you position Argos as a destination for these premium, desirable products. And we knew from our own kind of research that we had to kind of lead with entertainment, and that the audience that Argos particularly wanted to kind of reach were actually kind of using kind of social media in a way that's much more akin to TV. So really leading with entertainment and longer form episodic content that actually enables you to build a bit of a story and a narrative around a world. So we pitched a bunch of more conventional ideas, but we also at a point near the presentation said, okay, well, what if we didn't do that, and what if we actually worked with creators to create a whole different a different kind of world for Argos that took you completely out to your point about coming out of the conventions. What would it look like if we were to build something very different, and what could that look like? And the idea of Arghaüs was born. So essentially, Arghaüs is a fictional art gallery where the monthly A-list products are sort of displayed in this gallery like art pieces, and in a very much satirical setting. But we actually worked with some of the UK's best known comic creators, an incredible cast, and we gave them the canvas to tell the kind of episodic character-led series, so series that we knew that audiences were actually choosing to spend some time with. And then, like any series, we have surprise guests who sort of drop in throughout the mockumentary. And it's done really well. Over 14 million followers among the creators that we used, and we've surpassed that by far. I think we're on to about 17 million views so far. But more importantly, we have shifted perception. So when it comes to looking at the mid-funnel, we've increased awareness of the products range itself by 18%, and we've also increased perceptions of Argos being a place for desirable, premium tech products as well.
And I remember you telling me, Simon, because we've been measuring this as these episodes have been released over time this year, that with the initial review of the data that was coming in, where we're looking at how people are paying attention to the content, how it's working for them, and the kind of creative diagnostics, that was starting to feed in a little bit into some of the optimizations. Is there anything you could tell us about that?
Yeah. So we actually took the step of doing, usually with a campaign, you might wait until the end and do a campaign analysis. But because we wanted to really make sure that we were applying the learnings from the brand lift as early as possible, we waited for just two episodes, launch episode and episode two, sorry. And we did a full kind of detailed brand lift, including looking at the individual performance of different assets. And of course, the client and ourselves were really pleased with the early kind of reads that we were getting in terms of the brand recall was really strong kind of entertainment kind of promise in the episode, and being able to kind of pinpoint what exactly within the content was working. But we also had some kind of some lessons that we could apply to future episodes. So keeping it, finding a way to maintain the novelty and ways to kind of lean on our guest stars was really important. So whenever something kind of like new or unexpected or unusual was happening in the content, we were seeing this kind of spikes of interest and humor, happiness. So and obviously the whole campaign is about new products. So knew that that was central. We also took the step to increase the amount of product integration. So uh, we had, fantastic, I think 74% brand recall in the first couple of episodes, but we knew it could be a bit higher. So we finding ways to kind of weave the brand, and obviously it's a satirical take on a fictional setting of Arghaüs, but the little kind of cues for Argos, like on the bags and on the kind of setting of the gallery, and weaving that kind of product recognition was really important. So we sort of switched focus for the next two episodes to really kind of focus on the products themselves. And then we also were able to kind of see the role that shorter cut downs was playing as well. So
Yeah.
we were able to kind of, as a result of the first couple of episodes, test alternative timing approaches, such as some teaser shorts in between episodes, or remixing some content a bit later in the campaign just to sustain that momentum without
Yeah.
fatigue. So that's the trick, I think, with episodic content. You want people to come back and enjoy the story continuing, but you also need
Yeah.
to keep it fresh for audiences that might be discovering it midway through.
Got it. I remember we tested some of the long form content, the long form episodes. We also tested the short cut downs. And I remember the awareness of Argos was really high for the cut downs. And I was thinking a sharp little cut down can deliver a great dose of attention really well, and get that cut through for the brand. So Simon, I'd love to take a quick look at some of the results now, because one of my favorite episodes was when Asim Chowdhury comes along. He's a great British comedian. And he comes along and does he's a workshop facilitator, which is just a classic way to use Asim. So I'm going to jump into the Element Human workbench right now, and let's take a look at Asim doing his thing. He's some kind of guru, I think. And he's going to show us how it is with getting people in touch with their feelings within the Arghaüs gallery, right? So I'll turn the volume down so we can all hear each other a little bit. I'll press play. What we're looking at here is a heat map that shows where people are looking. So here he is kicking off his workshop session with some of those creators that you mentioned earlier. He's got such a great, dry, awkward sense of humor and style of comedy that work really well. You mentioned that, the brands put on these little plinths, aren't they, to kind of show off the kind of premium nature of them. And we thought those worked really well. We could see a lot of the kind of heat maps showed that people were looking at them and they were reading the little tag on the side where it would, talk about the what it is being sold. And as you say, the cut through of understanding and appreciating that Argos also makes premium products and you can buy them from Argos, and that whole perception change worked really well. So Simon, I want to show you something. I'm going to just switch off the heat map for a sec. I'm just clicking here so we can see this. Oh, here's something on the plinth. You can see all these wiggly lines here, Simon. So the blue line at the top is attention. And the yellow line is happiness. It's smiling. And so you can see this massive jump in people smiling and laughing. And as someone who tests this stuff day in and day out over the years, I can spot when something jumps out. And the size of this emotional response is off the charts. We almost never see such a jump in happiness and smiling. But what it is, it's when Asim really starts getting into some physical comedy. And here he pulls out this fan, and he's doing this kind of ambient wind dance with one of the security guard, and you can see that little dot on the screen there with that yellow line. That is showing you the incident that incited the smiles there. And the second one here is we have this creator and her personal assistant, although he doesn't like to think of himself as that, have the I guess you call it like the talking toy. When you hold the toy, you're allowed to talk, and it gets into this very passive aggressive competitive mode that is really cringy for the rest of the audience. You can see they're feeling very, very uncomfortable about the argument that now has been going on for 15 minutes, as you can see. So this one worked really, really well, and got a massive emotional response out of the audience. Simon, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it shows a couple of things there. It's the novelty within what is hopefully a familiar setting by episode 3, and we gave the creators the kind of license to have some fun within their and play as well as obviously looking at the script. So
Hmm.
yeah, and I think the fact that you've got kind of creators who are very much kind of used to bouncing off each other. So Abby
Hmm.
Clark, who played Yolanda in that scene, and Chris Hall as Finn,
Yeah.
they had fantastic ability to bring the scenes to life and ad lib and kind of make it even funnier than the script. So yeah, and I think the what's quite interesting with the second part where they're holding the talking devices, you also
Yeah.
have another emotion of I think is it a little bit of sadness, which is just kind of people feeling
That
maybe a
is
bit awkward.
correct. Yep.
That
So the awkwardness. I mean, I love it when you see competing emotions
yeah,
in the data. Right. We've got people smiling, other people going, "Oh my god, this is so awkward." Yeah. Really well spotted there, Simon. So thinking about this whole theme of memory, do these big spikes of emotion create great memory for the brand, and what kind of associations did they create? So if I flick my screen over, can we see this chart now? Okay, so this is the implicit association test that our system has included, which is a test of memory associations. And so there were 4 that we were testing for Argos. And what we're looking at here is the episodes that ran on Instagram, how they did. And you can see in the grey, that is the kind of existing subconscious memory associations that already exist for Argos amongst the target audience, and whether exposure to one of the creative pieces that we tested was able to deliver an uplift in creating even more of the target audience who now have those subconscious associations. And I can tell you right now, it's really hard to do well at this. In fact, the benchmark for Instagram for this, the kind of retail space in terms of vertical, is about 5 points. So if you can get 5 points, you're doing well. You can see 3 memory associations beat the benchmark here. On trend was we had an 11.4% bump on that. So that means there was an increase in the target audience of 11.4% of people who now also have a gut instinct memory association with Argos being on trend. Relevant, you can see there, 11.3 points, and trustworthy at 9.8. And you can see premium didn't move, so it didn't increase in terms of premium, but what you can see is it was maintained, and actually every brand has a cohort who has a negative association that was reduced. In fact, it was roughly cut in half. So anyone who had a negative association with Argos being seen as premium, actually that was halved. So really, really positive results across the board for Argos.
I also think one of the things here is that it just feels uniquely British. As an American who's lived in Britain, you guys love doing awkward humor. I mean, one episode of Peep Show just makes me uncomfortable. So I think it's really interesting that you've been able to keep a brand that's so uniquely British, but showing it in a new light. I have a lot of friends that told me about they remember getting the Argos like book at Christmas and
Oh
circling
yeah,
all the things they wanted for Christmas in the catalog. And so
yeah.
it's really cool to see how that perception is changing, and how you're creating those new memories in terms of what Argos is known for, using Arghaüs. So I think it's really, really fantastic, fun campaign.
Oh, thanks, Steph. Yeah, no, it is a fantastic legacy brand that and the way that they're using creators is really about using the kind of all of that goodwill that people have towards Argos. And you mentioned, circling the catalog at Christmas time, and so there's an awful lot of like latent kind of goodwill and awareness, but it's really a case of showing them what the new Argos is all about, and for that it's all about actually creators are a great shortcut to relevance and
Mhm.
showing that all of the desirable kind of products that we've all got half an eye on, especially when it comes to this time of year. That Argos has stocks them, and you can get your new air fryer or your robot vacuum cleaner or whatever it might be, or your Apple Watch down at Argos rather than other retailers. So
It's
yeah,
not
no, we're
Argos,
really
it's
pleased.
Arghaüs.
Argos, yeah, exactly.
Or
Yeah, we're really
has that
pleased.
caught on? Has that caught on in terms of using Arghaüs? Like, you know, how people sometimes refer to Primark as Primarni or Target in the States as Target. You know,
Hmm.
I would love to start hearing people start using Arghaüs, like, and saying
Oh, that would be a
that
new
was a
metric. We
terrible
can add
British
that.
accent.
Yes, if our house gets into the vernacular, we know we've done a good job.
I was just going to actually ask you, what's next? What's coming up for Arghaüs?
Ah, right. Well, this week gone, we've released a Christmas special because every episodic content series has a Christmas special, and social media episodic content is no different. So, yeah, and we really kind of leaned into some of the kind of learnings that we had. So we have our amazing recurring cast. So Abby Clark and Chris Hall, but as well as Paul Alima and Ella Wallace are back as Yolanda, Finn, Blade, and Frida. But we also have some special guests because you know every Christmas episode in entertainment in general has some special guests. So we have really pleased. We had Fred Asquith and Italian back drop in as surprise special guests and with hilarious consequences. So yeah, catch that episode. It's just being released now.
Fantastic. I can't wait to see it. It'll be on my high rotation on my Christmas playlist.
And we can't wait to measure it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It may be the funniest one yet.
I'm sure it will be. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Simon. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, and a pleasure to be involved in this fantastic campaign that's been going on through this year, and will continue. It's a great concept, and it's got a lot of legs. So let's see where we can go with this amazing concept, and push the boundaries of what's possible for influencer and creator content. Simon, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, and to Steph, and we'll see you all on the next episode of Elementally Human.
Peace out.
Thanks so much. Bye.